Hey guys. Tonight, we travel far back so far. In fact, that time itself feels thick, like honey sliding off a reed spoon. You're waking up in a mud-walled room. The air's still damp with Nile mist. And the clay floor beneath your sleeping mat already holds the heat of yesterday. There are no clocks here. No cozy morning routines. No snooze button. The day begins when the sun glares down like a divine tax collector. And you're already late. You stretch quietly because your siblings are curled beside you like a pile of old linen. And your father is already gone. Maybe walking barefoot across the floodplain. Or maybe, just maybe, sick again from that foul-smelling water he drinks when no one's looking. You probably won't survive this. Statistically speaking, if you're a slave or conscript laborer in ancient Egypt, and you're not making it to gray hair or even dad joke age, tooth infections, heat stroke, back-breaking labor, or simply angering the wrong official could end things quickly. But for now, you live, and your stomach's growling, which is the closest thing to a luxury alarm clock you're getting. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know your location and what time it is, where you're listening. I love seeing where you're all tuning in from. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You shove aside the woven mat that barely counts as a blanket and blink into the sun that's already slanting through the cracks in your reed roof. You can hear your mother murmuring something soft and hoarse, a morning prayer. Maybe. Or just counting out the day's rations under her breath. She's up earlier than you. Always is. Her hands already coated in flour dust. Kneading something with fingers that haven't felt softness since the last inundation. The Nile floods. The fields bloom. And you harvest. Yes, but you don't keep much of it. Taxes in grain. In labor. In loyalty. They call it, you're not free. You were born into this. A laborer. Or, if the scribes are being honest, enslaved, the good news, you're not chained. Not today. At least, most Egyptian slaves weren't shackled unless they'd misbehaved or tried to run. You have what some call domestic captivity, meaning you belong to someone, or to the state, or to the temple. But you get to walk around, breathe, work, sweat, sometimes even sing. If no one hears, the bad news, you've got about 20 minutes to eat before the overseer blows his whistle again. There's a communal fire pit outside the cluster of dwellings, and already a dozen others like you are crouched around it, blinking smoke out of their eyes as they warm barley bread on flat stones. It smells burnt. It always smells burnt. You don't complain. You tear into it, with teeth worn down from sand and grit and stone dust baked into every bite. Sometimes you think you're part statue already. There's a half onion in your pouch, gifted by your cousin, who works in a more generous household. And it's the most beautiful thing you've seen all week. It tastes sharp and defiant. You savor it like a secret. As you chew, your eyes catch the Nile in the distance, flat and gleaming like a god's discarded mirror. It's receding now. The floodwaters slowly pulling back, leaving silt-black fields and the heavy labor of planting season behind. You were helping there just weeks ago, knee-deep in muck, planting grain for people you'll never meet. Now it's back to the main project stones, cutting them, hauling them, lifting them up into structures that gleam like sunlight made solid. Some say you're building eternity. Others say you're just stacking rocks until your knees give out. A neighbor jokes that if you do a good job, the pharaoh might let you see the top of the pyramid before you die. Another says you'll get a golden amulet in the afterlife for every blister you earn. No one laughs very hard. The air is already heating. The bugs are rising like smoke from the riverbanks. And the day hasn't even begun. You wrap a linen scrap around your head mostly to block the sun, partly to soak up the sweat. Your only real tool is your own body. No magic chisel. No ox. Just your arms and your legs and a back that feels older than it should. You squint toward the direction of the work site. That familiar ribbon of dust rising in the distance. And you brace yourself. The trek is long. Your sandals are little more than woven reeds, already fraying. Some go barefoot. They brag about how tough their feet are. But you've seen the infections, the way pus bubbles under cracked heels. You're not trying to be heroic. You're trying to survive. Along the path, you pass others like you. Not kite family. Not kite strangers. You nod to a boy with a shaved head, except for one long sidelock. Probably 12. Already muscled from months of hauling water and hammering stone. You remember when your arms looked like his? Now they look like rope pulled too tight. A scribe sits at a shaded platform, already fanning himself lazily as he records the day's roster on a sheet of papyrus. His ink-stained hands are clean. His voice is nasal. Disinterested. He doesn't look up as he recites names. You grunt in acknowledgement. He ticks something with a stylus. You've seen what happens when people don't answer roll call. They disappear. Sometimes it's just illness. Sometimes it's worse. Historians still argue whether slaves like you were truly considered property in the full legal sense, or something closer to permanent laborers tied to temple or royal institutions. Either way, you don't have rights. You have obligations. And sweat. Lots of it. A dog trots by half-starved. Tongue. Lolling. You toss it a bread crust and watch it devour it like it was lamb. Some of the older workers claim dogs used to be sacred. Now they're just desperate. You finally reach the quarry's edge. And the sound hits you first. Hammering. Chiseling. Voices shouting in the sun. The rock face gleams pale gold and bone white. Depending on the angle, stone dust swirls with every blow. It gets in your ears, your nose, your teeth. You cough before you even lift a tool. Your overseer is already bellowing at someone near the ramp. A man's dropped a slab. It cracked. That means another half-day wasted cutting a new one. The overseer swears the man's faking his limp. The scribe notes it. You pretend not to see. As you pick up your mallet, rough and splintering, you whisper the same half-joke you do every morning. If the gods wanted to move stone, they'd have invented wheels. Someone next to you grunts in agreement. The Egyptians have sledges and levers. Pulleys. That's a fantasy. Your back is the pulley. The hours blur. You chisel. You hoe. You sweat so much it feels like your skin is trying to escape your bones. There's no concept of breaks, only moments when the shouting stops long enough to catch your breath. A flask of warm, weak beer is passed down. Barely alcoholic. Mostly just barley water. But it keeps you from keeling over. You glance up once at the top of the ramp, where the nobler workers, skilled artisans, favored laborers are carving sacred scenes onto temple blocks. You think you see a god's face emerging from the stone. It looks smug. You spit in the dirt and go back to chiseling. By sundown, your hands are raw, your back screams, your legs don't feel attached anymore. You shuffle home through the dust, watching the stars start to bloom over the horizon like cautious flowers. At the door of your home, your youngest sibling runs to you, laughing, holding something behind their back. It's a beetle, shiny, black, sacred. They whisper, "A scarab." You pretend to be amazed. You tell them it means protection, rebirth. You both know that's a stretch. But hope's like the bread here, coarse, cracked, and still oddly nourishing. The next morning comes faster than your muscles were hoping. You didn't really sleep so much as collapse and temporarily forget that your spine exists. The reed mat under you might as well be a pile of sun-baked bricks. Your limbs ache in that familiar, all-consuming way that feels both specific and eternal. Every joint whispers, "Let's not," but your stomach growls, "Let's absolutely." You roll up from the mat, careful not to jostle your sleeping siblings. Your mother is already up, like always, crouched at the communal hearth just outside the house. The fire smolders stubbornly, and she's fanning it with a folded palm leaf fan that's held together with twine and prayers. Her hands are mixing flour and water into dough, knuckles red and cracked. The only other sound in the early light is the rhythmic slap, slap, slap of dough being shaped into discs. Breakfast is on its way. Kind of. You sit down beside her, cross-legged, and she hands you one of the discs, still steaming from the stone slab where it baked. It's flat, dense, and studded with grit. That's just part of life when your flour is ground by hand between sandstone querns. A little crunch in your breakfast just means the grinding was done in a hurry. Or not at all. Your teeth are already worn from a decade of chewing this stuff. One day they'll give out completely. Probably while you're mid-bite and surrounded by other exhausted workers, trying not to cry in front of each other. For now, you tear into the barley bread like it owes you money. There's a clay jar of beer next to the hearth. Don't get excited. It's not pub night. This is ancient Egyptian beer thick, sludgy, the texture of something between porridge and soup. You drink it because it fills your belly. Barely fermented, barely filtered. But it gives you calories and keeps you from drying up under the sun, like last season's goat carcass. One of your older brothers said, "Beer is proof the gods want the poor to feel rich." If only for a few sips. He was immediately scolded for blasphemy. But you noticed even the priest smirked. The beer slides down thick and warm, tasting like wet hay and regret. Still, you chase every mouthful with a bite of bread. And you don't complain. Complaining is a luxury reserved for scribes, noble women, and toddlers. You spot your neighbor 2 huts down holding up a fat purple onion, like it's the Eye of Ra himself. He traded for it last night. Some say, with a goat tooth charm he found on the path near the priest's compound. Others say he's secretly got relatives in the temple kitchens. Either way, he slices it slow and shares it with his wife and their 2 kids. Ceremoniously, you swallow your envy with another bite of bland barley and remind yourself onions are currency. Forget gold. Onions are how you measure love. Historians still argue whether slaves like you were granted such luxuries as vegetables out of goodwill or as tools of manipulation. Bread and beer were standard rations. But anything more onions, leeks, even dried fish had to be earned, bartered, or begged. But the records don't show what those scraps tasted like after a 14-hour day. They also don't say how it feels to hold an onion like treasure, while your stomach folds in on itself like a crumpled scroll. The air is warming now. You know what that means. The overseer's whistle will shriek soon. Like a falcon, with something to prove. You scrape the last of the bread from your fingers. Rinse your mouth with water that tastes faintly of limestone and rust, and tie the same fraying scrap of cloth around your head. It's not for fashion. It keeps the sweat out of your eyes. And, hopefully, the flies off your neck. You say goodbye to your mother with a nod, no hugs, no drama, and head toward the rising dust trail of your day. You join the slow-moving river of bodies trudging toward the worksite. Some are already limping. A few try to hum a tune, something ancient and rhythmic, but it dies out quickly under the weight of silence. Everyone saving their breath. You spot your friend Hapu ahead, the one who lost 2 teeth last month to a dropped dolerite hammer. He waves, revealing swollen knuckles and a bandaged wrist. Better than yesterday, he says, unconvincingly. You nod, and the two of you walk together toward the quarry where the stone faces wait. You won't be cutting stone today. Though, today's a hauling day. That means ropes. That means splinters. That means dragging limestone blocks the size of small donkeys across planked ramps, greased with water, and, sometimes, oil. If the scribes are feeling generous, you don't know who came up with this method. But you suspect they didn't have to pull anything themselves. You wish you had an ox. You don't. You've got your legs, and the gods' dubious mercy. The block they assign to your crew looks impossible. 10 men, 1 stone. You all stare at it, like it's been sent as a divine prank. But no one jokes. Jokes take energy. You spit into your hands. Wrap the rope around your waist. And heave. The first few steps are the worst, like trying to shift a mountain that really doesn't want to move. The ramp ahead rises gently but unforgivingly. You dig your heels in. The wood planks creak. Somewhere behind you, someone farts and mutters an apology, which might be the funniest thing you'll hear all week. You laugh weakly, then cough. The sun climbs. Your vision swims. Your feet feel like baked mud. A scribe walks past, watching with bored detachment, recording something on his little scroll. You wonder what he writes. Block moved 10 cubits. 1 labyrinth collapsed. Beer requested. He wears a fresh linen kilt and smells faintly of myrrh. You smell like desperation and old onions. At noon, you're allowed to pause. Not stop. Just pose. Shade is scarce. But there's a rock ledge that blocks the sun for half an hour. And you sit there, bunting. As flies, investigate your ears. You chew on a dried date someone shares. It tastes like sugar and wood chips. You bless him anyway. Somewhere in the distance, a priest is chanting. You catch a few words, something about Osiris and balance and blessings for the land. The irony doesn't escape you. You're helping build a temple dedicated to eternal peace while slowly dislocating your spine. You think of home? Not the mud hut. The idea of home. Somewhere your bones don't ache. Somewhere your food doesn't crunch like sandpaper. Somewhere your child won't have to memorize the weight of a chisel before learning to walk. You shake your head. Daydreaming leads to mistakes. Mistakes lead to punishments. You've seen the stick, the lash, the pit. You get up. You haul. You finish the day under a sky that turns from gold to blood to velvet. Back home, your mother hands you a bowl of lentils. They're thin, barely salted, but hot. She pats your shoulder gently, then turns to your youngest sibling, who's drawing little birds on the wall with a charcoal stub. You smile despite yourself. The bread tonight is still gritty. The beer is still bitter. But the meal feels almost holy after the day you've had. You close your eyes and pretend, for a moment, that you're a nobleman, that this bowl is gold, that your back is straight, that the gods know your name. You wake before dawn to a new sound, a high, slicing whistle that seems to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. It's not the wind, not the dogs, not even the priest's annoying early morning chants. It's the overseer's whistle. That thin reed pipe of a man has lungs like a hippo in heat and a talent for ruining dreams. You sit up fast and instantly regret it. Your back protests like it's been beaten with bricks. And your arms are already sore from tomorrow's work. You don't need breakfast to be awake. You need forgiveness from every joint in your body. Still, your mother has made bread again. Always the bread. This morning, it's shaped into smaller, twisted knots, because she thinks that maybe, if it looks different, it'll taste better. It doesn't. It still carries that signature crunch of stone dust and baked insects, but the warmth is a kindness. And you chew dutifully. You wash it down with yesterday's beer, which now has a thin film of mystery floating on top. You swirl it a little. Still drink it. What's one more risk? Then you're out the door. Sandals scraping the dirt path toward the quarry. You know today's shift will be under Sennajem, again the overseer, with the permanently furrowed brow and voice like a goose being strangled. He's not the worst, but he's in a mood lately. Last week, someone in your team dropped a tool down a shaft, and he spent an hour screaming like the gods themselves had lost their crown jewels. You pass the same scenes each morning. The old man with the missing eye who sharpens chisels for copper coins he'll never spend. A kid chasing a chicken like it insulted his ancestors. Two women scrubbing linens in a basin filled with Nile water that's only slightly less foul than donkey spit. These are your neighbors. Your world. You don't love it, but it's what you've got. By the time you reach the site, the sun is already licking at the back of your neck, and the ramps leading toward the construction area are coated in a slippery mix of water, mud, and pessimism. You nod at Hapu, who's ahead of you, shoulders already dusted in chalky powder. He lifts a dolarite hammer in mock salute and mouths. Good luck. You mouth back. I hate luck. It's true. Luck in your world means being picked for a slightly less miserable job than the one next to it. Today. Unfortunately. You're not that lucky. Sennajem calls your name and gestures toward the lifting crew. You blink. Lifting. As in, hoisting the blocks that other poor fools just spent days chiseling into shape. Your arms try to escape. You grab them and sigh. The pulley system you're about to use isn't exactly what you'd expect. There are no wheels, no gears, just muscle, rope, and some very questionable engineering that depends heavily on a mixture of optimism and inertia. You've got to raise blocks high enough to stack them into place on the monument side. The blocks are carved with hieroglyphs, so pristine they look like divine graffiti. The irony doesn't escape you. Those perfect marks are a tribute to gods who never once picked up a rope. Your team gathers around the lever points. You loop the ropes around your shoulders. Plant your feet in the dirt. And wait for the signal. When it comes an undignified squawk from Sennajem, you all heave in unison. The block groans. The ropes stretch. Your legs burn. And still, it rises. Slowly, very slowly. Like a stubborn deity being lifted from a nap, you sweat so much, it feels like your skin is dissolving. You yell. Everyone does. It helps. A little. By mid-morning, your hands are blistered raw. Someone gets crushed twos. Someone else vomits from heat. Senegem pretends not to notice. He just paces back and forth like a very unimpressive god of logistics, muttering numbers to himself and occasionally yelling, "Faster," as if that alone can defy physics. You pause for breath under a narrow strip of shade. More imagined than real. Hapu stumbles over, carrying a flask of something sour-smelling, and says, "Drink. It's fermented date juice." You raise an eyebrow. Is it safe? He shrugs. Not remotely. You both drink anyway. Historians still argue whether laborers like you were permanently enslaved or part of a corvée system, a form of temporary, forced labor owed to the state. Some say you'd be rotated out eventually, sent back to your home village with calloused hands and a few bread loaves as thanks. Others say those promises were often broken. From where you're standing, hauling a limestone slab the size of a buffalo. It doesn't really matter. Free or not. Your job today is the same. Don't die under the block. By early afternoon, one of the hauling ropes snaps. The entire crew stumbles. A few fall to the ground, and the block lurches to the side. You throw yourself backward just in time. Dust fills your mouth. Someone's screaming. Someone else is laughing in that high-pitched, hopeless way people do when they've stared at death too often and still have to show up the next day. Senegem storms over. "What happened?" he barks. As if any of you sabotaged the rope on purpose. The scribe standing beside him quietly scribbles something down, probably a note to request sturdier materials. Probably to be ignored. A man named Mena, older than most, limps away, holding his wrist. It hangs wrong. He mutters something about being cursed. You believe him a little. He's the fifth person injured this week. The work slows. Tensions rise. The overseer's shouting becomes a background drone. Your muscles move almost on instinct now. Haul. Lift. Brace. Grunt. Breathe. You stop noticing the pain. That part of you goes numb, which is both helpful and horrifying. By the time the sun begins to fall, the block is finally in place. A priest shows up in robes, far too clean for this side of the kingdom, and sprinkles what smells like cedar water over the stone. For purification, he says. You resist the urge to ask if it works on broken backs. As you trudge back down the ramp, your legs tremble. Not from fear, just from fatigue. Pure, bone-deep exhaustion. Hapu walks beside you. His hands bleeding through the wrap he tied around his palms. He jokes that he might take up basket weaving. You suggest grave robbing. At least the dead don't fight back. You reach your home just as the sky turns lavender. Your mother hands you a bowl of something soft mashed lentils with a hint of garlic. If she managed to trade well at market. You thank her with a glance. She nods and turns back to stirring another pot. You sit outside, too tired to eat yet, watching the stars blink to life over the Nile. The breeze is cooler now, brushing past your face like a mother's hand. You close your eyes, and for a moment, you imagine a life where you wake up without dread, where you climb hills, not pyramids, where you eat because you're hungry, not just to survive. A beetle lands on your leg. A scarab. sacred symbol of rebirth and transformation. You gently brush it away. Maybe tomorrow will be better. Maybe not. But tonight, you're still here. The morning sun strikes hard before you're even on your feet. Light knifes through the cracks in your wall like the gods are stabbing you awake. And the air already hums with the kind of heat that makes sweat pool in places you'd forgotten had skin. Your arms feel like sandbags stuffed with regret. And your back, well, your back decided long ago that loyalty doesn't extend past the first yawn of the day. But you're still alive, still needed, and unfortunately, still expected to show up today. Though, the work site isn't the usual dust-choked pit. It's the quarry proper, which sounds like a change of pace until you realize what that really means. Cutting stone from the earth. With tools so primitive, even your dreams wince when they see them. You munch half a barley loaf as you walk stale, dense, and still warm from the fire that burned all night in the village hearth. It's hard and coarse enough to double as a self-defense weapon. If only criminals could be scared off by carbohydrates. You swig beer as thick as porridge and almost cough on a grain husk. You squint at the morning sun, then follow the path already worn smooth by thousands of feet, just like yours. The quarry appears slowly through the haze, as if even it is reluctant to be seen. A wide mouth, carved from the bones of the earth. It yawns open, edges jagged, slopes treacherous. The white of the limestone catches the sunlight and reflects it like 1,000 tiny suns aimed directly at your face. There's no shade. None. Just blinding glare and the occasional mercy of a passing cloud, if you're lucky. You pick up your tools, left in a pile where yesterday's crew dropped them, a dolerite pounder worn smooth, a copper chisel already bent, and a mallet that looks like someone carved it from a tree in a hurry. It's not elegant. But then again, neither is your job. You start with the pounding. That means standing in front of a massive, unyielding wall of stone and smacking it repeatedly until it decides to let go. It's like trying to reason with a donkey using only your forehead. You and the others work in a rough line, spaced just far enough apart that you don't clock each other in the ear. The pounding has a rhythm to it. Crack, pause, grunt, repeat. It's hypnotic, dangerous. Even, you get into a rhythm and forget everything else. Your hands, your pain, your name. Eventually, you switch to the chisels. Copper doesn't hold up well against limestone, so the chisel's dull. Almost instantly, you spend half the time reshaping the tools over a small fire with bellows that squeal like piglets. You wonder if the gods invented copper just to test your patience. And the dust. The dust is worse than anything. It coats your throat, your lash, your thoughts. It clings to sweat, becomes paste, then hardens into a crust that cracks when you move. Your skin isn't skin anymore. It's armor made of misery and minerals. Mid-morning, someone behind you curses and drops their tool. A sharp cry follows. A chunk of stone splintered wrong, slicing a hand. Blood on limestone looks almost ceremonial. The overseer rolls his eyes like he's seen this play out 1,000 times, and he probably has. He tosses the man a rag and says, "Wrap it or lose it." Then walks off. You lean against your knees and glance sideways. There's a donkey hauling baskets of rubble up a steep slope. Its eyes are wide and glassy. Its legs wobble. It's not going to last much longer. None of you are. But the day doesn't care. One of the newer workers whispers that this quarry once served Pharaoh Sneferu, whose pyramid collapsed twice before finally staying upright. The gods were sending a message. He says. You nod solemnly, not because you believe him, but because you need the superstition. Anything that suggests someone's paying attention, even if it's just a divine architect with a flair for drama. You take a break around midday, if you can call it that. Breaks aren't scheduled, they just happen when your legs stop listening. You find a patch of shade behind a pile of rubble. Squat low and chew the rest of your bread. It's soggy with sweat from being tucked in your tunic, but you eat it anyway. Hapu sits nearby, shirt off, back red and raw. He shows you a new bruise. You wince in sympathy and show him yours. It's a contest. No one wants to win. You both chuckle softly when a kid passes carrying 2 jugs of water. One for the workers and one for the scribes. The scribe's water is clear and cool. Yours has things floating in it. Probably protein. Historians still argue whether workers like you were truly slaves, or more like conscripted peasants free in theory, but required by law to work certain months. You don't have the luxury of debating the label. Whether you're owned or obligated, the result is the same. Your hands are raw. Your back is bent. And you still have to show up. Later in the day, you're assigned to haul rubble. Again, it's grunt work. But at least you're not pounding stone anymore. You load baskets, lift them to your shoulder, and trudge the path up to the cliff edge where the chutes lead down to the smoothing yard. The slope is steep. Your sandals are slippery, and every trip feels like the last one you'll survive. You lose count of how many baskets you carry. 5, 10, 20. Your legs move on their own now. Your shoulders ache with that sharp, bitter pain that means something important is tearing. But you keep going. At one point, someone throws up over the edge. No one reacts. No one stops. There's nothing left to say. By sunset, the limestone glows gold. It's beautiful. You admit that much. The way the cliffs shimmer. The quiet that finally descends once the overseer stops yelling and the hammers fall silent. You walk home slowly, each step like dragging a boulder behind your heels. When you reach the village, your mother is sitting outside, shelling beans. The smell of stew, weak but fragrant, rises from a pot beside her. She looks up and sees you, and for a moment, her face softens. Inside, your siblings sleep. One of them talks in their sleep, muttering nonsense about birds and boats. You sit beside them and eat slowly. Every bite feels earned. Every chew is a victory. Outside, the stars return. You lie on your mat, face to the roof, and trace imaginary shapes in the reeds overhead. Your body twitches with leftover strain. Your hands ache. Your eyes stay open, long after they should close. Tomorrow, it will be the same. The sun, the stone, the dust. But for now, you breathe. The ramp looms ahead, like some cruel joke stretched across the earth, rising steadily toward the base of the pyramid. It's wide, dusty, and greased with weeks of water and fish oil to make it easier to slide the limestone blocks. Easier is generous. As you stare up the incline, sweat already pricking your forehead, you wonder how many people have actually made it up this ramp without crying or herniating something vital. The block you're assigned to today is roughly the size of a small garden shed. Its edges are smooth, its corners sharp, and it sits smugly on a wooden sledge. daring you to try and move it. There are 12 of you in this pulling team. Muscles, bruise, and sunburns in vaguely human shapes. Hapu's back again, face wrapped in a filthy linen cloth to keep the dust out. And he gives you a nod that says, "Well, we're still alive." Not that that's a guarantee. You loop your pulling ropes across your chest and shoulders. The fibers dig in immediately, already sticky from yesterday's sweat. At the command, you dig your feet into the packed earth and heave. The block groans like a creature being dragged from its den. The sledge groans louder. The ramp eats your energy with every step. 1 foot forward, another, then another. The incline turns your legs to jelly and your lungs to smoke. Your hands grip the rope so tight, your knuckles shine white beneath layers of grime. And still, the block moves. You shout something. Maybe a prayer. Maybe a curse. Maybe both. Someone slips on the wet ramp, stumbles, and nearly drops the line. But others close in, pulling tighter, keeping the rhythm. You can't stop. If the block slips, if the ropes give out, you'll be crushed flatter than the bread your mother makes on her griddle. You finally crest the next level of the ramp and let the ropes fall. Gasping, the block rests. For now, someone jams wedges behind the sledge to stop it from sliding back. You collapse onto your knees, panting through your teeth, heart pounding like a ceremonial drum. Around you, more blocks ascend. Some teams chant to keep rhythm. Ancient songs older than your grandparents, older than memory. Others just grunt and curse and bleed in silence. The ramp zigzags upward endlessly, curling around the growing pyramid like a ribbon of suffering. You remember when the base was just being laid. You were younger then, smaller, still figuring out how to hold a chisel without splitting your hand open. Back then, you believed the stories that helping build the pharaoh's tomb meant your soul would be favored, your afterlife blessed. Now you believe in surviving until dinner. Historians still argue whether this massive project, probably a pyramid for a new kingdom ruler, was built entirely by slaves like you, or whether it relied mostly on paid laborers and conscripted farmers during the off-season. Maybe it was both. Maybe none of you are truly free. But some at least go home with onions and a better mattress. You don't dwell on the politics of it. You dwell on the next block, and the next, and the next. At midday, the sun is a godless eye, staring down without mercy. You chew a strip of dried fig someone passes you, and it sticks to your teeth like melted brick. Water skins are passed down. But the water's been sitting in the sun too long. It's warm and tastes like copper. Still, it's better than nothing. The scribe, overseeing your section of the ramp, looks like he hasn't broken a sweat in his life. He lounges beneath a canvas awning, eyes flicking lazily over a scroll as he notes who's slacking, who's pulling extra, who might be soon. His ink-stained fingers have never touched rope. You fantasize about tying him to the next sledge and giving him a taste of divine architecture, peasant style. Instead, you lift again. The next haul is worse. You feel the fibers of your sandals coming apart. A stone chip works its way into your heel. But you don't stop. You can't stop. Behind you, a man groans and lets go too early, and the block lurches sideways. You all jerk to compensate. A rope burns your neck. You hiss and clench your jaw. The block makes it. Barely. You lean against it, arms trembling. The foreman barks orders, pointing to the next team to take over. Your shift on the ramp is done for now. You still have smoothing duty next. That means dragging a handstone across the face of each newly laid block until it gleams. It's not about function, it's about beauty. The pharaoh doesn't just want a tomb. He wants a statement. Something to make every other dead ruler jealous. You take your stone, squat low, and begin to scrub. Back and forth, over and over. The stone screams under your hand like it's offended. Your wrists throb. Your shoulders burn. Across the platform, a group of artists, real, trained artisans, carve hieroglyphs into the finished walls. They work in silence. Their lines elegant and sure. They're recording the pharaoh's greatness, his divine birth, his countless victories. You wonder if one of them would ever dare carve the story of the ramp pullers, of the sand-bitten, bone-bruised laborers who dragged a mountain into shape. You doubt it? You make it through the rest of your shift without vomiting, which feels like a win. The moment the foreman dismisses your group, you unhook your sandals, rub your blistered toes, and limp your way back toward the edge of the construction zone. The walk home is slower now. Always as after a ramp day, you pass a team of oxen, swatting flies with their tails as they haul grain for the high priests. The priests themselves, probably eating honeyed cakes and cooling their feet in lotus-scented baths. You'd pity them, but you're too tired. Back in the village, your siblings are chasing one another with palm fronds, pretending to be crocodiles. One of them has a pot on his head and declares he is the pharaoh now. You smile weakly, imagining what would happen if he ran Egypt. Probably more naps. Maybe better shoes. Your mother has made stew lentils again, thickened with crushed chickpeas and flavored with a pinch of garlic. She saved the softest bit of bread for you. You thank her by reaching over and squeezing her hand. She squeezes back, says nothing. After dinner, you sit near the fire. Someone is telling a story about Set and Horus and a magical boat that could fly over the desert. It makes no sense. But the kids love it. You watch the flames flicker and let the words wash over you like warm wind. As you finally lie back on your mat, the stars overhead pulse gently. You feel the ache in your arms slowly fade into a dull hum. You think of the ramp, how it stretches and twists and climbs. You think of the block you moved. You imagine it resting in place for thousands of years, long after your name has vanished. And somehow, that thought settles you. Night passes like a shallow breath. You don't dream, not really. If anything flickers behind your closed eyes, it's just fragments, a stone slipping, rope snapping, dust in your mouth, the blinding sun licking your skin raw. You open your eyes before the first rooster crows. Your body has learned to wake at the precise moment it hurts least, which is still pretty bad. You step outside into a dawn mist crawling off the Nile. Soft and ghostly, as if the gods are sighing over the world, they forgot to finish. Everything is gray and still. Arari. Delicate quiet wraps the village until a woman begins yelling at her husband for leaving his tools out again, and a child drops a water jar with a satisfying smash. So much for soft beginnings. You hunch over the fire pit with your mother, trying to coax the flames back to life. This morning's bread is rougher than usual, overcooked in patches and damp in the middle. But you tear it open anyway, and stuff it full of garlic greens your mother managed to forage. It's almost luxurious. The beer is sour and warm. As expected. You drank deeply, the way a rich man might sip from an alabaster cup, and call it breakfast. Then you're off again. Feet dragging a little slower. Toes wrapped in new bandages. But instead of heading to the quarries or ramps, today you're assigned to the workers' village itself. The limestone blocks aren't the only thing that need maintaining. People break down. 2. Huts collapse. A. Food stores rot. Tools vanish mysteriously. Maybe stolen. Maybe swallowed by the sand. So today, you're here, among the murmuring gossip, slapping sandals, and smoke-curling hearths of those who labor beside you, but live worlds apart. The workers' village is a dense little maze of sun-baked mud-brick homes, just outside the sacred pyramid zone. It's not big, but it's packed. Life pulses through its narrow alleys, mothers barking at children, dogs nosing through garbage. A scribe, chasing a goat with more frustration than grace. You're not here to relax. You've been told to help repair a crumbled wall and redistribute fresh clay bricks where they're needed. Manual. Yes, but not deadly. You'll take it. You make your way to the collapsed section. The damage looks minor. Just a few rows of bricks gave way during the last storm rain, poured down so hard it felt like Horus was spitting from the sky. You start stacking new bricks, the wet clay oozing between your fingers. The smell is earthy and strange, like wet sandals and crushed dreams. The neighbor helping you today is a woman named Nebet. Strong arms, sharp tongue. She mixes mud like a champion and shovels gossip with the same efficiency. While you slap mortar onto a row of bricks, she tells you, in a hushed voice, that someone's been sneaking out at night. Not to escape. No. That would be too obvious. But to meet a scribe in secret. She brings him sweet dates. Nebet whispers, eyes glinting. He gives her scrolls with songs in them. You raise your eyebrows. Love poems, you ask. Death curses, she says. Then she grins. Probably both. You laugh. But you can't help wondering. Scribes have power. They can read, write, track rations, report slackers. They're the glue that holds Pharaoh's divine spreadsheet together. If one of them wanted to help someone, or punish them, well, that scroll could be the difference between rations or ruin. A woman in love with a scribe, it's foolish. Maybe. Or maybe brilliant. The villagers here don't live like nobles. But some of them have carved out tiny luxuries. One man's door is painted blue. Another has clay statues of the gods perched over his threshold. You pass a young girl sitting cross-legged outside, threading beads from broken pottery into a necklace. She beams up at you like you're royalty. You wave. Your hand is crusted with clay. She doesn't care. In the afternoon, you're redirected to assist in the communal storage house. It's where dried goods, spare tools, and medical herbs are kept. You've never seen so many onions in one place, ropes of them hanging from rafters, braided and gleaming like pale fists. You resist the urge to steal one. Barely. Onions mean strength. Or so the priests say. They were even buried with pharaohs. You wonder if your afterlife comes with garlic. While stacking baskets, you overhear a heated conversation between two elders. One insists the laborers should refuse extra shifts during the next festival. Let the nobles carry their own offerings for once. The other shakes his head. And get whipped. No thanks. My son's finally been assigned to temple kitchen duty. I'm not risking that. They argue for a while, then leave together to share a roasted fish. That's the rhythm here, Rage. Argue. Forgive. Repeat. Historians still argue whether these workers' villages were places of relative comfort or cleverly disguised prisons. The housing is better than a slave pen. Sure, but still cramped, dusty, and filled with tension. Your every move is recorded. Your rations are monitored. You live close. Breathe each other's air. You know everyone's secrets, whether you want to or not. Later, you stop by the small temple tucked near the village entrance. It's simple, nothing like the grand stone monuments you helped build. Still, a priest lights incense and offers blessings to Ma'at, goddess of balance. You kneel, just for a moment, and whisper a prayer you don't expect to be heard. Not for freedom, not even for better food, just for tomorrow to come and go without something breaking. By evening, the air cools. You wash your hands in a basin and join a cluster of neighbors sharing the evening meal. There's laughter tonight, real laughter. Not just the exhausted chuckles of broken men. A boy does impressions of the overseer's angry squawk. An older woman sings a lullaby from a province far upriver. You lean back against a wall, chewing on a bit of roasted lentil paste wrapped in flatbread, and let the moment sink in. It's not perfect. It's not even good, if you're being honest, but it's a pocket of peace. And in your world, that's worth something. You spot Nebit again. Now, cradling a clay jug in her lap, she catches your eye, grins, and says, "The scribe brought honey cakes today." You blink. Real honey. She nods solemnly. Divine. I could smell it from across the courtyard. You both sit quietly for a moment, listening to the gentle hiss of oil lamps and the low murmur of tired bodies winding down. A man near the fire begins carving a bit of scrap wood into a tiny figure, a cat. Maybe. Or a lioness. He holds it up for the children to see, and they clap in delight. One of them asks, "Will it protect us?" He nods, smiling. If you give it a name, you lie down under the stars again. But this time you're not alone in the quiet. Around you, voices fade into sleep. Someone snores. Someone hums. Someone talks in their dreams. You close your eyes and think of onions, braided like treasure. Love, notes, scribbled between baskets of grain. And the girl threading beads outside her hut. This village is not a palace, but it is alive. You don't head toward the quarry today, nor the village storehouse, nor even the ramp that haunts your calves in your dreams. Instead, you're diverted to the temple construction zone, a place where every stone must not only be cut, but blessed, because when the gods get picky, they don't want bricks, they want offerings carved in symmetry, purity, and the agony of men who skipped breakfast. Temples are different from pyramids. They're alive, sacred, political. You don't just build them, you participate in their worship by bleeding into the floor joints. Every wall, every statue, every colossal column has to sing divine praise in limestone. And of course, the gods can't chisel for themselves. You walk past an enormous sandstone pylon, half complete, its top still jagged, like broken teeth against the blue sky. The air smells faintly of incense from the adjacent shrine, though the workers themselves are caked in the usual trifecta sweat, dust, and very mild panic. You're part of the floor team today. Smoothing panels meant to hold offerings and altars, which sounds ceremonial until you realize the panels weigh as much as a crocodile having a bad day and are twice as stubborn. You take your place beside 3 other workers, 2 of whom are chewing roasted chickpeas and glaring at the foreman with casual hatred. The third, a man called Pamu, is humming to himself, while dragging a burnishing stone across the surface of a slab with maddening patience. If the gods don't like scratches, he mutters, they can file it themselves. Your task is simple. Flatten the stone, buff it smooth, carve a series of lines where the ritual water is meant to drain. Don't chip the edges. Don't talk too loud. Don't look directly at the priest walking past. Yes. That one, with the shaved head and sandals cleaner than your drinking water, 1 hour in, and your hands are blistering again. Not just the usual rope and chisel blisters. These are polish blisters. The kind that make you long for the comparatively gentle pain of hauling limestone. You pose, wipe your forehead, and glance toward the ceremonial altar being erected across the court. It's beautiful. In a completely infuriating way, 2 artisans are shaping it. Real artisans. Not rough laborers like you. They wear slightly better linen, are allowed to work in partial shade, and one even has an apprentice fanning flies away. You watch as he carves the falcon-headed god Horus into the side. The lines precise and flowing like water. It's hypnotic. You've never been inside a completed temple. You build the bones, then leave before the priests wake it through ritual. But you've heard stories that the inner sanctum glows even at night, that the statues blink when no one's looking, that the floor feels warm under your feet. You assume it's all nonsense, but it's comforting nonsense. And you need that. One of your team messes up and drops the edge of his polishing stone. It leaves a deep gouge in the slab. The foreman sees. Everything freezes. You hold your breath. The foreman stomps over, squats, and examines the damage. Can you fix it? He asks. The man nods slowly, clearly lying. Good, the foreman says, and walks off. The man exhales in relief, then looks at you and whispers, if Horus wants a smoother altar, he can give me wings. Midday arrives, and brings with it a short pause, just long enough to cram some food into your mouth before your stomach starts cramping from rage. You eat by the scaffolding half a bread, some mashed lentils, and a finger-length strip of dried fish, so salty your tongue goes numb. It's perfect. You consider it a meal fit for royalty. Historians still argue whether slaves assigned to temple building had it better or worse than those working on pyramids or farms. Some claim temple duty came with better food and cleaner conditions, at least in proximity to sacred sites. Others say it was worse, more surveillance. Stricte discipline. More priests breathing down your neck, asking if your soul is clean while you're trying not to faint. Either way, your soul is too tired to argue. After the break, you're pulled aside by a lanky man in linen robes who looks like he hasn't done a day of lifting in his life. Come, he says. We need an extra hand in the storeroom. You follow, curious and suspicious. The storeroom is part of the main temple complex, a vaulted chamber lined with shelves of perfumed oils, incensicones, painted figurines, and ceremonial tools. It smells like crushed blossoms and dried spice. For a second, your nose forgets what sweat is. Your job is to unload 2 baskets of alabaster jars from a cart and place them on the inner shelf. That's it. No lifting stones. No kieseling. Just carrying delicate, sacred containers full of mysterious goo and not dropping them. You feel like an intruder. A dusty, half-starved intruder in a museum, One jar slips a little in your hands, and you swear your heart stops. It doesn't fall, but a priest standing nearby flinches, just slightly, and then says flatly, "Perhaps next time we use someone with cleaner hands." You want to tell him where he can store his ceremonial oils. Instead, you smile, disexpo, and leave before he changes his mind and puts you on dung-shoveling duty. Back outside, the sun hits you like a slap. You blink into the brightness and resume, smoothing the final stones near the base of the temple. You're not allowed to carve the gods' names yourself, but you help carve the lines around them, the borders that give structure and flow. It's strange. You'll never be credited, but your fingers have etched the edges of eternity. Pamu turns to you near the end of the shift and says, "You think the gods care who smooths their floors?" You pause. "I think they care more than the pharaoh does." He laughs, a short, bitter bark, and slaps his thigh. "That's the best joke I've heard all day." As the day ends, the temple casts a long shadow across the sand. You stand in it for a moment, savoring the temporary cool. Then you start the walk home. When you reach the workers' village, something's different. Music. Not just the usual lazy hums, but real rhythm. Drums. Reed flutes. You follow the sound and find a circle forming near the village square. Someone's returned from an outer village with news of a birth. A woman who went into labor during her work shift still managed to deliver, then finished smoothing her stone before sunset. She's fine. The baby's fine. The overseer is confused. Naturally, there's a celebration. Nebet pulls you into the circle, hands you a half-empty jug of palm wine, and tells you to stop looking like a cracked statue and start moving. You laugh. You dance, or at least shuffle awkwardly, and for a moment, your blisters don't exist. The baby is named Seti. It means of Seth, god of storms and chaos. Everyone chuckles nervously. Maybe not the luckiest name, but certainly accurate. Later, you sit by the fire, watching the embers drift upward. Someone's passed out beside you, snoring. The stars blink overhead. You think of the temple's clean, sacred halls, and the workers like you, whose hands will never be remembered. And yet, the temple will stand. For centuries. Maybe, people will walk its halls, pray at its altar, marvel at its carvings, and you'll be in there, hidden, silent, polished into stone. You're sore in places you didn't know could be sore. Not just muscle pain, but bone-deep weariness that feels structural, like your skeleton is halfway through crumbling into dust. And still, the morning routine unfolds. You wake, you eat the same barley bread, and drink the same warm, suspicious beer. And then you follow the same path, with the same slow resignation in your gait. But today, you don't follow the trail to the quarry, or the temple, or the ramps of doom. You're called to something more. Cerebral. You're working under a scribe. And not just any scribe, the scribe. The pale, ink-stained, sandal-wearing, nose perpetually in a scroll man who runs the labor rosters and keeps track of how many days you've worked, how many jars of beer you've received, and how many complaints you've definitely not been allowed to make. His name is Jehuti, and he speaks like he's always halfway through correcting you. Today, Jehuti has decided the storage scrolls are a mess. Rations have gone missing. Laborers are swapping duties unofficially. One man apparently traded a ramp shift for a turn in the temple latrines, which everyone agrees was a deeply concerning decision. So, he's enlisted extra hands to help sort through the inventory and redraw the ledgers. That's where you come in, a dusty, sunburnt, semi-literate peasant being asked to carry clay tablets, sort baskets, and definitely not spill anything on the precious papyrus. You're skeptical. Jehudi raises an eyebrow at your expression and says, "Don't worry. I won't ask you to write." Then he pauses and adds, "Unless you can write." You shake your head quickly. The last time you tried drawing a lotus, someone asked why you carved a drowned chicken. The storeroom is cool and dry, tucked into the side of the administrative compound. Clay jars, wooden crates, and baskets of goods are organized in a way that only Jehudi understands. You follow his instructions. Carry what needs carrying, and try very hard not to sneeze on anything important. You start to notice things, like how the tally marks on one papyrus scroll don't match the quantities stored in the baskets, or how some laborers' names appear multiple times for the same duty, or how certain supply lists include items you haven't seen in months, dried dates, honey cakes, even meat. You ask Jehudi about it. Cautiously, he narrows his eyes. You think someone's stealing, you shrug. I think someone's eating very well. He doesn't smile. Then maybe we don't mention it again. Historians still argue whether temple and labor scribes were neutral bureaucrats or low-level enforcers of an exploitative system. Some view them as record keepers just doing their job. Others believe they deliberately inflated quotas and manipulated records to skim off rations for their own households. Either way, Jehudi's ink-stained fingers never show signs of manual labor, and yet he knows more about your daily sweat than your own mother. He hands you a scroll and asks you to read the symbols. You squint. You recognize the signs for bread, beer, and toil. Very relatable script. He sighs, snatches it back, and mutters, "We need more schools." You spend the rest of the morning helping him move tablets from one shelf to another. You're not sure if this is actual work or just an elaborate puzzle Jehudi's playing with himself. He talks as he works, and you begin to realize he's not quite what you expected. "I was born in Thebes," he says. "My father wanted me to be a priest. I failed the purity tests. Too many questions. Not enough reverence." He chuckles to himself. "So now I keep lists." You grunt in response, unsure if this is confession or just boredom. He doesn't seem to mind. You carry a large tablet to the next shelf and nearly drop it when someone behind you yells, "Fire." You whirl around, heart leaping until you realize it's a false alarm. A cooking fire in the village sparked too close to a thatched roof, and someone panicked. It's out before you can react. But the energy of the day changes. Workers mutter. Someone throws blame. Tensions rise. Jehudi closes the scroll in his lap and says quietly, "People are getting restless." He's not wrong. You've felt it too. There's been less beer in the rations lately. More injuries. Fewer medical herbs. A rumor's been floating that someone tried to bribe a guard to get transferred back to their home village and disappeared. Disappeared in that way. That means you should stop asking about them. As you return to organizing the scrolls, you start to understand Jehudi's burden. He's not just recording your lives, he's maintaining the illusion that it all makes sense, that the numbers add up, that the gods are watching, and everything is fair. Deep down, You think he knows it's a farce, but he writes the scrolls anyway. Because someone has to. Around midday, he offers you something rare, a honey date. For your help, he says, and your silence. You chew it slowly. It's soft, sweet, and completely at odds with everything else you've eaten this week. It tastes like luxury, like secrets, like a warning. He sends you home early, telling you not to mention today's tasks. You're a good worker, he says. But if anyone asks, you were hauling stones. You nod. You can lie. You're used to pretending things are fine. You pass the temple walls on your way back, and a group of priests are sprinkling natron over the threshold, chanting about purity and light. You wonder how much natron it would take to cleanse a system that depends on Jehudi's quiet edits to function. Back in the workers' village, Hapu greets you with a look of surprise. You're done already. You nod and hand him the stale half of your bread from breakfast. He grins and asks, "Did you find out where the onions are hiding?" You shrug. Maybe. The evening feels quieter than usual. You help repair a leaking water jar, chase a goat that somehow climbed onto someone's roof, and patch a hole in your sandal with a strip of linen. Life keeps moving. That night, as you lie on your mat, the stars flicker like they're gossiping. You imagine them as scribes, recording your every movement with heavenly ink. You wonder what they'd write about today. That you moved tablets, that you ate a honey date, that you learned silence is just another kind of strength. And maybe, just maybe, that Jehudi isn't the villain you thought, just another pawn, a clever one. Buried alive in ink, you wake to the sound of clapping rhythmic, distant, and accompanied by the unmistakable off-key squeal of a flute played by someone with more enthusiasm than talent. A festival you'd nearly forgotten, not because there are so many of them, but because for you, a festival doesn't mean rest. It means more shouting, more lifting, more ceremonial sweeping, possibly more onions if the gods are feeling generous. The air is thick with the scent of incense and sweat. You step outside and immediately see movement everywhere. Children dash through alleys with painted faces and paper sun discs tied to their backs. Women string flowers along door frames, mostly dried lotus blossoms and palm fronds. Priests bark orders while juggling offerings and shouting about the correct orientation of ritual geese. You chew a bit of stale bread and follow the crowd. You're not on temple or quarry duty today. You've been pulled into the festival workforce, a small army of laborers assigned to make the whole celebration look effortless. You're not entirely sure which festival this is. Something about Ra ascending, or Osiris returning, or Pharaoh sneezing 7 times on the equinox. The specifics don't matter. The result is the same extra work and less beer. Your task begins with sweeping the processional way, a long corridor of packed dirt lined with banners and broken hopes. You're handed a reed broom with the structural integrity of a handful of spaghetti, and you begin pushing yesterday's dust in long arcs toward the canal. There's a man walking beside you who insists this festival is for Hathor, goddess of joy and wine. And you nod. Because, sure, at least one of you should be having a good time. Later, you're assigned to carry a ceremonial litter covered in gold leaf, supposedly blessed by the high priest himself. It smells like resin and ego. It's heavy, awkward, and shaped like a miniature boat balanced on poles. As you hoist it onto your shoulder with 3 others, you whisper, "Is there anything in this thing?" And the man behind you says, "Just Pharaoh's divine approval." You both chuckle, which nearly makes you drop your end. As you march down the street in awkward unison, the crowd claps. The priest on the litter waves as if he's not sitting on four people's backs. You breathe through your nose and focus on not collapsing. Music blares from the temple plaza ahead. Reed flutes, drums, clapping, the rhythmic stamping of dancers. There's color everywhere, red sashes, green shawls, faces painted with coal and ochre. It's beautiful, and loud, and exhausting. The noble families in their shaded balconies sip from clay goblets and watch the show like it's a children's play. One tosses down a garland. It misses and lands in the street. A boy picks it up and eats it. You finally set the litter down near the outer courtyard. Your hands are numb. Your shoulder bruised. The priest thanks no one and disappears behind a curtain of incense. You sit on the stone step and try not to dissolve. Hapu shows up with a grin and a jug. "Festival beer," he says. "Actually fermented. Don't tell anyone." You take a sip. It's cold, slightly, and stronger than the usual slop you get on quarry days. You close your eyes and try to taste the barley before the bitterness hits. It's almost pleasant. Hapu raises his eyebrows. They say, if you drink enough of this, Hathor dances into your dreams and blesses your feet. You glance at your feet, blistered, cracked, wrapped in linen that smells like regret. She better bring ointment. 2. As the day wears on, your next job is to help move offering tables. These are carved stone platforms decorated with scenes of cattle, birds, bread, and the usual suspiciously perfect pharaoh profiles. They're not light. You and 2 others hoist one onto a sledge and drag it across the courtyard, inch by inch, sweat dripping from your nose onto Ra's sacred engravings. The irony is not lost on you. You're told not to speak as you work. The gods require silence. Apparently, even if they're being relocated. But someone behind you lets out a long, squeaky fart that ruins the sanctity of the moment. You all try not to laugh. You fail. Historians still argue whether these grand festivals served more as genuine religious events or as tools of state propaganda, public morale boosters to reinforce Pharaoh's divine status. Either way, they rarely meant rest for people like you. They meant long hours disguised as celebration, prayer as performance, and occasional joy if you were lucky enough to sneak away from duty. You do get a break. Surprisingly, an hour of freedom, during which you and Hapu wander through the village perimeter where vendors are shouting over one another, hawking fried fish, sweet cakes, and polished charms carved from bone or shell. You have no money, of course, but Hapu trades a copper button for 2 honeyed figs. He hands you one, like it's royal treasure. You eat it slowly, letting the syrup stick to your fingers, to your memory. Nearby, dancers gather in a circle, women in colored sashes and men with painted faces. One beats a drum against his hip, another twirls a stick of burning incense, making loops in the air. The smoke smells like cinnamon and dry grass. You join the edge of the crowd and sway a little, just enough to forget your aches, just enough to feel human again. A priest appears at dusk and orders the dancers to prepare for the final ritual. The sun is low now, casting long shadows across the plaza. Everyone turns toward the main temple steps. The high priest emerges in his leopard skin robe, holding aloft a golden idol of Ra with outstretched wings. He begins chanting, and the crowd falls silent. You stand there, half aware of your pounding heart, the beer settling in your stomach, the grit in your sandals. The chant rises. A child begins to cry. A dog barks and is quickly shushed. The priest shouts a final phrase, and the crowd erupts into applause. Someone nearby lets loose a shower of flower petals. You raise your arms because everyone else does. And it feels like maybe, just maybe, the gods see you for once. That night, back in the village, there's music still echoing faintly from the temple. You sit outside your house, feet soaking in a chipped basin of cold water. Your mother hums softly beside you as she stitches a new tunic for one of your siblings. They're asleep already. Face pressed to your shoulder, you think of the golden idol, the figs, the laughter, the silence around the sacred offering table, and then you remember the priest's face as he was carried through the crowd, blank, detached, heavy with importance. You wonder if he slept that night. You wonder if you'll dream of Hathor's blessing. Or just more bricks. Your arms ache. Your feet throb. And you've got dried beer crusting at the corner of your mouth. But at least today, you won't be scraping limestone under the sun. Today, you've been sent to help at the estate of one of the noble families, a private house near the edge of the village that looks more like a fortress, married a garden, and had a very smug child. The foreman calls it light indoor duty. You don't believe him. Nothing in your life is light, especially not indoor. You approach the gate and get your first glimpse of privilege done in mud brick and stone. There are painted columns, ivy-draped latticework, and decorative statues of falcons that probably cost more than your family's total annual rations. A servant at the gate eyes you like you're a lice outbreak wearing shoes, then waves you through with a sigh and a slow shake of his head. Back courtyard. Don't touch anything. Inside, it smells like oil and date syrup. Everything is polished, arranged, and utterly impractical. The floors are swept. The air is cool. The rooms have doors, actual doors. And inside those doors are beds you could bounce a scarab off. You pass a hallway where you catch a glimpse of someone lounging on a cushioned platform, being fanned by a child who can't be older than 6. He looks up and says, "That child is my cousin." As if that clears anything up. You nod and move faster. Your assigned task is simple in theory. Assist the house staff with floor scrubbing and water carrying. But the nobles have very high standards for cleanliness and very low patience for human error. A drop of mud on a polished tile can send the steward into a divine-level meltdown. You take your sandals off before stepping onto the central courtyard stones and immediately regret it. The sun's already baked them into a surface that could fry lentils in under 5 seconds. You meet another laborer assigned here. Her name's Ketty. A slim, fast-moving girl with arms like whips and a smirk that says she's been yelled at by every steward from here to Karnak. Don't speak unless asked, she whispers, handing you a cloth and a wooden scrub block. And if they ask you where you're from, just say, the valley. They like to think everyone comes from somewhere mysterious. You begin scrubbing. The floor is already clean. But it's the kind of clean that rich people think still has invisible sins. You polish tiles until you can see your face in them, which is unfortunate because you look like a tired papyrus scroll someone tried to erase and start over. An hour in, a servant calls for water. You and Ketty haul clay jars from the back cistern, trying not to slosh it on the mosaic path. One jar cracks as you set it down, and the steward clicks his tongue with enough judgment to curdle goat's milk. You brace for punishment. But he just waves a cloth and says, "Next time, balance it on your shoulder like an adult." You don't respond. You fantasize about pouring the water over his very adult sandals. Later, the lady of the house appears. She's wearing pleated linen that drapes in loops and folds like river mist. Her jewelry clinks faintly as she walks. Her eyes are lined with kohl, so thick you could use it as ink. She passes you without a word, without a glance, and disappears into her perfume room, which you know is real because it smells like myrrh and rose petals instead of boiled barley and anxiety. Ketty mutters, "She's the fourth wife, and the favorite." You nod. Because of the jewelry, Ketty snorts. Because she once made a priest cry by correcting his pronunciation of papyrus. You're sent to clean the stables next. Less glamorous. More familiar. At least the horses don't pretend they're better than you. The grooms joke with you, a little one even shares a piece of dried fig, and you start to wonder what it would be like to work here permanently. Indoors. Sheltered. Fed properly. Then you hear a steward screaming at a girl who dropped a tray of fruit, and you remember noble households don't let you survive. They let you serve. Historians still argue whether domestic slaves in Egypt had it better or worse than those in state projects. On one hand, they avoided the heat and hard labor. On the other, they were under constant scrutiny, had no privacy, and were sometimes treated as living furniture. You don't envy them. Not really. You just wish someone would invent a job that wasn't terrible. Near midday, you take your break beside Ketty under a shaded trellis where vines grow over a stone bench. It's not comfortable, but it's private. She pulls out a chunk of soft bread wrapped in palm leaves and breaks it in half without a word. It tastes like it was made in a real oven, with flour that didn't come with added sand. You sigh in surprise. "You steal this?" you ask. She shakes her head. "Earned it. I make jewelry sometimes. One of the wives bought a necklace I made from fishbone and beetle shell." You blink. "She paid you." Ketty shrugs. "Not in copper, but in this." She grins and holds up a glass bead. "Don't drop it. That's a month of rations right there." You hold the bead up to the light. It glows. It's beautiful. For a moment, you see another life, one with tools, color, barter, dignity. Then the steward yells again, and you return to the stables, dragging water jars and sweeping straw, with a sigh that could flatten a wall. By evening, your arms are trembling and your knees are coated in filth, but you've managed to get through the day without getting hit, cursed, or reassigned. That's what you call a victory. As you leave through the side gate, Ketty catches your arm. "You're all right," she says. For a stone puller, you nod. You're not bad. For someone who cleans invisible dust, she tosses you a wrapped fig and disappears into the courtyard shadows. You watch her go, wondering how someone that sharp ended up in a place this dull. Then you remember, you're the one who's been hauling granite up ramps. And you smile at the irony. Back in the workers' village, your mother asks where you were today. Noble house. You say, lots of scrubbing. Fancy floors. She grunts. Did they feed you only bread? You say, and a lesson in patience. You lie down early tonight. Your body sinks into the mat. Every muscle grateful for something soft, even if it smells faintly of goat. You think about Ketty, the bead, the steward's sour face, the tiny triumphs that somehow get you through each day, and then you fall asleep wondering if tomorrow might be a quarry day again, because strangely enough, after all that, you'd rather wrestle with stone than invisible dirt. You don't even hear the warning. 1 minute you're standing beside Hapu, watching 2 men wrestle with a cartwheel stuck in a muddy rut. And the next, there's a clamor shouting, crashing, a wood splitting, and you turn just in time to see a man try to bolt. He doesn't get far. The guards descend fast, like buzzards in sandals. The man barely makes it 5 paces before they drag him down into the dirt, kicking and shouting. You don't recognize him. He's one of the newer ones, lean, sunburnt, wide-eyed, the kind who always looks like he's got a secret plan but forgets the gods aren't big on secrets. The guards beat him down. Not with whips or sticks, just fists and knees. Swift and practiced. No need to kill. Just to maim. To make a point, he had tried to run, and that never ends well. The crowd that forms doesn't speak. You all just stare. Silent. Stiff. Pretending your faces aren't registering anything at all. Because if a foreman or priest catches you looking sympathetic, you might be next. Eventually, the man is dragged away by 2 thick-armed guards who toss him over a donkey like a sack of old bricks. The foreman announces loudly, "I won't return." Let that remind you, the Nile does not carry cowards. You return to work, because what else is there? The cart finally dislodges. You and Hapu pretend nothing happened, though your hands shake a little as you adjust the ropes. The man's scream echoes a bit longer in your ears than you'd like. You tighten the knots. Focus on the sound of stone grinding against wood, and push the thoughts away. Still, they claw back later while you're hauling rubble, while you're scraping your palms bloody, while the sun turns your brain to barley soup, and they really claw back at night. You lie in the dark, eyes open, and wonder what did he think would happen? Where would he go? The desert offers only sun and sand. The Nile has crocodiles and hippos. And even if you dodge both, you still have to explain your absence in a kingdom where every loaf of bread is tallied. Historians still argue whether runaways in ancient Egypt were always captured or sometimes managed to vanish into the countryside. Some suggest sympathetic villages might take them in, especially those who'd suffered under the same burdens. Others believe the bureaucracy was too tight, too detailed, that a missing worker might as well be a missing stone in a temple wall, noticed immediately, punished swiftly. You don't know what the truth is. You just know you've never seen anyone succeed. And this isn't the first. There was another. Years ago, Seti. She worked in the granaries, hauling sacks that weighed more than she did. Her hands were always wrapped in linen, her voice barely louder than a whisper. One day, she stopped showing up. Some said she drowned herself. Some said she reached the Nubian border. Most just stopped talking about her. You'd be lying if you said you never thought about running. Some nights, when the wind is low and the stars are particularly bright, you lie on your back and imagine walking until the sand turns green, until the horizon breaks open, until you reach a place where no one knows your name is on a scroll under Hall Team. Left flank. But then your mother coughs in her sleep, or your sibling shifts beside you and mutters something about dates and figs. And you remember you're not just running from something, you're leaving everything behind. Still, today's events shake people. You can feel it. Whispers ripple through the village at night. The usual hum of tired laughter is replaced by murmurs and sidelong glances. Someone claims the runaway was trying to reach Thebes. Another says he had a lover in a nearby estate who promised him shelter. One man mutters that the guards are going soft 10 years ago. They would have cut off his nose. You try not to imagine it. The next morning, the mood is different. The workers move more quietly. Even the children play closer to home. There's tension in the air, like something coiled and ready to snap. The overseers notice. You can tell by the way they pace. Mutter to one another. Bark orders twice as loud. Even Jehudi the scribe keeps his head down today, writing faster than usual, not looking anyone in the eye. You spend the day moving stone blocks from the smoothing yard to the main construction ramp. It's repetitive work, familiar and almost comforting. Your body knows the rhythm by heart squat. Lift. Brace. Shuffle forward. Repeat. You lose yourself in it. The ache in your back becomes background noise. The sting in your palms becomes percussion. At midday, a commotion breaks out near the storerooms. Someone's been accused of hoarding dried fish. A foreman screams. The accused sobs. It feels performative, like a show meant to realign whatever cracked yesterday. You don't look up. You keep lifting, because if you stop, you'll hear the crack of knuckles on skin again. And your stomach already feels like it's full of pebbles. Later, when the sun sinks and your work is done, you find Hapu by the fire. He's staring into it like he's watching visions. You sit beside him quietly. He doesn't speak for a while. Then he says, "He was stupid." You nod. Brave. 2. You say, Hapu shrugs. Maybe. Or just tired. You both sit there, letting the warmth seep into your bones. Around you, others begin their small routines, cooking, mending, braiding hair, sharpening tools. No one talks about the runaway now. He's become just another layer of dust in the village's memory. Covered over. Quiet. Still dangerous. You chew on a piece of flatbread. It's hard as wood, but it gives your jaw something to do. The stars blink overhead. The Nile whispers in the distance. Someone nearby says, "There's another one planning to go." You don't turn your head. You don't ask who. Instead, you say softly, "I hope they've got better sandals." There's a fresh coat of paint drying on the face of a god. And you're the one who put it there. Your arm's still aching from holding the brush aloft. But you've done it. A flawless turquoise stripe beneath the golden eye of Horus. Right between the divine eyebrow and the sacred cheekbone. No smudges. No drips. And so far, no shouting. You step back, squinting in the early light, and marvel not at the artistry, but at how absurdly smug the face looks. Every statue of the pharaoh wears that same expression, as if he's too busy planning eternity to care about the 20 men sweating around him just to get his chin the right shape. You're part of the detail crew this week. Arare assignment. It's not for muscle. It's for steadiness. For quiet. You're not cutting stone or hauling bricks. You're polishing, painting, decorating, giving the final divine touch to the monument that's taken years off your lifespan. A small, elevated platform has been built around the newest shrine, a side chapel dedicated to Amun, plastered in smooth white. And just waiting for its colors, you climb it carefully each morning with brush, pigment bowl, and a prayer that no one bumps the scaffolding while you're painting the divine nostrils. The pigments come from a scribe's storehouse, red ochre for the skin, blue from ground azurite, black from charred wood and soot. Every color carries meaning. Red is life. Blue is rebirth. Gold well. Gold is divine, and surprise, you're not trusted with any. That's a task reserved for the highest of artisans. Those who train under temple scribes and somehow manage to keep their kilts clean while working with volatile mineral powders. You, on the other hand, are painting the pharaoh's royal skirt. Every fold, every pattern, painted one line at a time. You're halfway through when the brush splits. Not ideal. You lean down and whisper to Hapu, who's on pigment mixing duty below. This brush is dead. He looks up with one eyebrow raised. Maybe it was sacrificed to the gods of symmetry. You snort. He tosses you another one slightly less frayed and mutters, "Try not to give Horus a unibrow this time." You're not offended. Last week, someone misaligned the god Ptah's ceremonial staff and had to repaint the whole panel. And once, a laborer accidentally drew a tiny fish into Ra's sun disk. No one noticed for 2 weeks. Until a priest found it and lost his sandals in fury. Historians still argue whether laborers like you were allowed to participate in decoration or only supported the artisans. Some records suggest skilled workers occasionally rose through ranks, even becoming full-time temple artists. Others imply you were kept on the margins, just close enough to be useful, but never essential. From your spot on the scaffold, you feel like a background detail, but it's still better than hauling rubble. A scribe walks by, holding a scroll. He pauses, inspects your section, and nods. No words, just a nod. That's the closest thing to praise you'll get. And you take it like a trophy. The paint dries quickly in the sun. You step back again and admire your work. The figures in the panel show the pharaoh offering incense to Amun, who sits stiffly on a throne, holding a Waz scepter like a divine walking stick. The pharaoh's eyes are wide, his arms impossibly long. Everything's exaggerated, idealized. You wonder if he's ever even seen an incense burner up close. You climb down for lunch. There's shade under the platform. You and Hapu share a pouch of salted lentils and dried onions. It's not bad. A bit chewy. You joke that it's just like eating jewelry. But spisher. Then you hear the chant. A group of priests approaches, flanked by servants carrying trays of fresh-cut lotus blossoms and steaming bowls of scented oils. The high priest is there, too, robe pristine, gold amulet bouncing on his chest like a smug little sun. They're doing a blessing today, a ritual to awaken the shrine and ensure the gods don't notice the workers use too much red on the pharaoh's ears. You step aside, out of view. Workers aren't supposed to be seen during ritual. The priests chant. They sprinkle water from the Nile. They wave incense until the air tastes like burnt flowers and mystery. And then, with great solemnity, they smear a paste of myrrh and ochre on the statue's mouth, the opening of the mouth ceremony, meant to give the god his senses. You wonder if the statue ever wanted to see this place. After the ceremony, the shrine is declared sacred. From now on, only priests may enter. You won't touch it again, not even to sweep. Your job is done. The divine now belongs to the divine. As the sun lowers, you're sent to help repaint the outer wall. This one shows a battle scene, Pharaoh smiting enemies with a flail. Bodies piled like firewood beneath his chariot. You repaint arrows mid-flight. Horses, with impossible muscles. and enemies whose faces look suspiciously like people from the village 2 towns over. You glance at Hapu. "Should I give this one a beard like Senegem?" He grins. "Only if you want to get reassigned to latrine duty." You keep your brush steady. You know it's propaganda. You know the pharaoh probably never wielded a weapon in his life. But the paint is real. The wall is real. And your hand is part of it. That night, back in the village, someone sings a work song about a painter who fell in love with a goddess. He'd painted so beautifully that she came to life, but only long enough to slap him for making her nose too wide. You laugh with the others. Belly full of lentils. Hands still faintly stained with pigment. Your mother sees the red on your thumb and asks, "Is it blood?" You shake your head. Worse. Pharaoh's skirt. Later, as you lie on your mat, you think about the god statue, the painted eye, the freshly blessed mouth. Somewhere, someone is probably praying to it now, believing it listens. You know better, and yet, as you drift off to sleep, you imagine that eye blinking. Just once, just for you. There's a whispered plan this morning. You hear it while tying the same tired linen over your head, shielding yourself from the sun that hasn't even risen fully yet. Someone near the water jugs mentions the boat, just loud enough for the idea to land in your ears like a mosquito that might bite or buzz off, depending on the wind. By the time you're carrying your first basket of rubble toward the ramp, the whispers caught like dust in your lungs. A boat. A whiff. Something moored by the reeds behind the storage huts. The man says he knows the guard's schedules, that the tide's right, that the Nile's current will carry you fast if you just push off before anyone notices. Of course, someone always thinks they know. But what's different is how quiet it's gone. Usually, the work yard hums with low murmurs. The slap of sandals on stone, the rhythmic groans of pulleys, and the grunts of 2 tired men doing 2 heavy jobs. Today, though, the air's weird. Still, like everyone's listening for something, you feel it in your gut, that tension, coiled and quiet, like the moment before a dog growls. The Nile's just visible, beyond the palm-fringed rise to the east. You can smell it in the breeze mud. Fish. Waterweed. Life. It's always there, glittering like a promise. And for the desperate, a road. Or at least, an escape fantasy with very sharp teeth. Because the Nile isn't just a river. It's a beast. Crocodiles patrol the edges like floating logs with judgmental eyes. Hippos lurk deeper, quiet and faster than they have any right to be. One of the older laborers lost a brother to a hippo. He says the creature lunged from the water, crushed the boat, and vanished before anyone could scream. "We never found the ore," he adds, as if that's the real tragedy. And then there's the guards. You know the routes, the temple checkpoints, the toll scribes, the patrol skiffs with men who know what runaway footprints look like. Even if you survive the animals, the watchmen, the currents, where would you go? Every village belongs to someone. Every patch of tilled land is spoken for. You can't just show up in Thebes and ask for a new name. Still, the idea itches. During your mid-morning haul, you pass Hapu and murmur. You hear about the boat. He snorts. Heard it's made of reeds and prayers. Then he leans closer. But if it's real, it's going tonight. You almost trip over a kissel. The rest of the day passes in haze. The heat is brutal. the kind that makes your thoughts feel like clay baking inside your skull. You work on autopilot: move, lift, lower, repeat. Your hands are a separate being now. You barely notice the cut when a rope splinters against your thumb. At midday, a water skin is passed around. You drink deeply, then too deeply, then sputa, coughing. Hapu pats your back. Don't drown yet. That's for the river. You look at him. You going, you ask. Low, he shrugs. Thinking about it. My cousin lives upriver. Says he's got connections. Might even get a farmhand job, where the foreman's blind in one eye. You both know that's probably a lie. But it's a lie with direction. After the shift ends, you clean your tools, roll your shoulders, and pretend it's just another evening. You walk back to the workers' village through the usual cloud of dust and shouting, but inside, your heartbeat is doing strange things. Your mother greets you with half a smile. She's weaving new sandals from papyrus strips. You watch her fingers move fast. Skilled. She glances at you. Why do you look like you're thinking dangerous thoughts? You don't answer. Instead, you go to the river. You pretend it's for water. A wash. A breath of cool air. But you find them there, 3 figures crouched low in the reeds, whispering fast. One of them is holding a reed bundle tied with rope. Afloat. You recognize the guy in charge, Setcom? He worked in the smoothing yard. Tall. Lanky. Scarred across one cheek. Always watching people too closely. The kind who calculates everything. He sees you and frowns. You here to tattle or paddle. You pose. Just looking. You can't just look. He mutters. Either you're in, or you're silent. The boat leaves after third watch. No lights. No talking. You bring nothing but silence and bare feet. You nod and back away, all evening. Your mind races. You eat without tasting. You help repair the thatch roof without remembering which ladder you climbed. Your mother notices. Of course she does. She calls you over. Presses a palm to your forehead. You're warm. And stupid. She says, don't chase ghosts in the water. You lie down early. But you don't sleep. Not really. Your mind plays the same reel, a skiff cutting through reeds. Stars overhead. The slosh of water. The rush of escape. Freedom. Thin and sharp as obsidian. Historians still argue how often workers actually fled from state labor in ancient Egypt and whether escape was truly possible. Some records mention captured runaways, branded or mutilated. Others note leniency if caught quickly, but evidence suggests it was rare. Not because no one wanted to run, because they all knew the odds. And yet, when the moon rises high and the village falls into hush, you slip from your mat. You move silently past the dogs, past the cook fires burned down to coals, past your brother's open mouth as he snores like a goat with rhythm. Your feet press into the dirt. Each step louder in your head than in the world. Near the reeds, you hear it rustling. A low voice. The boat is there. Long. Low. Patched with mud and cloth. Setchem gives a small nod. 2 others are already seated. 1 space remains. You stand there, heart pounding, and think of your mother, weaving sandals, of your sister mouthing songs in her sleep, of the scarab you found that day near the temple, the one you still keep in your pouch, of Hapu's face when he said, might even get a job. Then, Softly. A hiss. Now or never. You step back. I can't. You whisper. Setcam says nothing. Just turns. Nods to the rower. And pushes off. The boat slips into the darkness like it was never there. Gone in an instant. No splashes. No screams. You watch the wake ripple once. Then settle. Later, in your hut, you lie on your mat, breathing fast and shallow. Your hands are trembling, not with fear, but with what-ifs. What might have happened? What didn't? You stare at the ceiling. And you think not for the first time that staying is its own kind of bravery. Morning comes like a scolding. The air is heavy, the sky dull, and everything smells vaguely of mildew and old dreams. You sit up slowly, every joint sounding like someone crushing dried reeds in a fist. Your eyes sting. You didn't really sleep, not after what you saw last night. That boat slicing through the river, the gentle hush of the water swallowing it whole. It's gone now. And so is your certainty. But there's no time to linger. You've been called early, before even the bread has had time to finish baking on the griddle. Today is inventory day in the ration storerooms, which means weighing grain, checking baskets of dried goods, and watching other people do math. You meet Hapu near the temple wall. His eyes are red-rimmed, and he doesn't say anything at first. You both know what almost happened, what nearly changed. But instead of words, he just hands you a small clay bead shaped like a fish. For luck, he says. You nod. Pocket it, and follow him to the storehouse. The ration storerooms are tucked between the granary and the guard station. They're built of solid mud brick, with high windows that barely let in any light. Inside, it's cool, dusty, and smells like old onions and panic. Shelves line the walls, piled with baskets barley, emmer wheat, onions, leeks, dried fish, garlic, and jars of that odd lard that never seems to spoil, but definitely smells like it should. You're not here alone. 2 scribes are seated on stools, making long marks on papyrus scrolls with smug little flicks of the wrist. They don't look up when you enter. They just point toward a set of baskets and say, "Count those. Measure them. Report. Back." One of them yawns dramatically, as though your exhaustion offends him. You and Hapu begin the process. Lift. Weigh. Record. Lift again. It's more tedious than hauling stone. Somehow, at least stone doesn't judge you for miscounting. You discover 1 basket is half empty when it should be full. You point this out to the scribe. He looks up, blinks once, and says, "It was probably eaten by rats." You glance at the sealed lid. Very polite rats. He frowns. Are you questioning temple inventory? You star back. No. Sire. Just admiring their manners. He doesn't laugh. The day passes in a rhythm of sorting, lifting, brushing away, weevils, and discovering just how many smells dried fish can possess depending on how long it's been stored. You find a corner basket labeled premium lentils. You open it and find pebbles. You close it again. Later, while stacking jars, you spot a boy not much older than your youngest brother sweeping up a broken oil flask. He's new, nervous. Every time a jar clinks, he flinches like he expects to be cuffed. Hapu notice. 2. He'll learn, he mutters, or he'll vanish. You overhear one scribe whisper to the other, "Keep an eye on that one. He's from the southern village. The one with the unrest." Unrest. That word again. It keeps popping up like a bad fig in your lunch. There's been talk of food shortages upriver, of people withholding grain, of a cart that was burned. Accidentally or not. No one seems sure. Historians still argue how organized resistance among Egyptian laborers really was. Some believe there were coordinated protests, small, strategic, often bloodless. Others think any disobedience was isolated and quickly stomped out. But no one doubts that people got fed up. And, when bread is your only paycheck, a short ration feels like a punch in the teeth. By mid-afternoon, your back is sore from bending. You sit briefly against a wall, watching dust motes dance in a ray of light slicing through the window. It's strangely peaceful. Then you hear shouting outside. You rush out to see a small crowd forming near the edge of the workers' village. Two men are in a heated argument. One's a laborer from the ramp team, broad-shouldered, furious. The other is a guard, tense, trying not to draw his blade. The laborer shouts, "We had fewer loaves this week, I counted." The guard replies, "And I count your days. So be careful how many you have left." No one intervenes. Not the overseers, not the scribes, not the gods. The moment passes when the laborer steps back, breath ragged, and throws his hands up. "I just want my son fed," he mutters. Then he walks away. The guard watches him go, like a cat watches a bird that flew just a bit too high. You return to your storeroom, heart pounding. That night, your mother serves stew with fewer lentils than usual. She says nothing. You don't ask. You eat slowly, savoring each bite. Your brother jokes about stealing onions from the noble estate. Your sister giggles, but your mother only stares into the fire. After dinner, you sit outside with Hapu. The stars are clear, and the moon is low. He says, "My cousin who ran last year, word is he made it. He's living by the marshes, trading fish. New name." You raise an eyebrow. Word from who? He shrugs. Someone who knew someone. Doesn't matter. It's just nice to think about. You lie on your back, watching the sky. "If I had a son," you say, "I'd teach him to lie, so he could tell the scribes he's a priest's nephew and get out of hauling stone." Hapu chuckles. "I'd teach him to swim, just in case." You don't say what you're really thinking, that you'd teach him to keep his head down. That even dreaming costs energy now. That the world is held together by a very fragile string made of barley and silence. But you fall asleep that night with the sound of the Nile in your ears. Its gentle hush, like a secret, just out of reach. The skiff is long gone. The ration shelves are lighter. The tempers are shorter. And yet, you're still here. Still carrying. Still counting. Still imagining a world where your children won't have to trade muscle for bread. You never planned to believe in magic. Not real magic, not fire-breathing statues or talking jackals or amulets that glow when danger's nearby. You're practical. You trust in bread, sweat, and how many stones you can haul before your spine politely quits. But sometimes, the only thing that gets you through the heat, the labor, and the endless repetition is something tiny and strange. A whisper, a charm, a pinch of powdered hope. This morning, your neighbor's daughter presses a bead into your hand before you even roll your mat. It's not fancy, just a lump of dried clay with a symbol scratched into it. It's for protection. She whispers. Keep it on you, in case they see you. You blink. Who? She shrugs and runs off. You stare at the charm. It's misshapen, cracked, and damp from her palm. But you slide it into the cloth pouch you keep under your tunic. The same one that holds your only copper coin. A broken reed stylus. And a feather you found near the quarry that looked like it came from a god's hat. Today is shrine cleaning day, not the real shrine. Of course, you're not allowed within 3 arm lengths of anything truly sacred. You're cleaning the exterior chapel, the kind meant to impress the nobles and make the priests feel important when they walk by. It's mostly dusting, sweeping, repainting damaged sections of reliefs that pigeons have. Somehow, mistaken for toilets. You're handed a pot of paint and a delicate brush, too delicate, really, and told to fix a flaking falcon on a corner frieze. Stay within the lines, the overseer says, glaring, like you've been known to color outside the gods. As you work, your fingers cramp. The paint stings your cuticles. You try not to smudge anything. It's easy to forget this is supposed to be divine art, and not just chipped stucco meant to impress whichever noble has the fattest donkey cart. Still, the paint glows as it dries. That deep lapis blue, that sharp ochre red, and in the right light, the eye of Horus stares back at you like it knows your worst secrets and still thinks you're funny. Later, you're sent to help with incense preparation, a job both tedious and oddly mystical. You sit cross-legged in a shaded alcove with 3 others, each grinding resin into powder, mixing it with cinnamon, myrrh, and something that smells suspiciously like swamp bark. Hapu leans in and whispers, "You know this stuff doesn't do anything." "Right." You nod. "Yeah, but it smells expensive." He snorts. And the gods have expensive noses. One of the priests supervising the mixture clears his throat loudly. You both fall silent and resume grinding. After a while, the rhythm of it becomes soothing stone against stone. Soft hiss of powder settling. The faint tang of resin in your nose. It feels not sacred. Exactly. But old. Like you've stepped into something deeper than just a work schedule. When the batch is done, the priest blesses it with a murmured chant, sprinkles something sparkly on top, possibly salt, possibly powdered teeth, and seals the urn. Historians still argue whether these ritual items were believed to actually summon the gods or merely to honor their memory. You're not sure. All you know is that people work harder when they think the gods are watching, especially if the gods are rumored to curse lazy painters with boils. Later that afternoon, while scrubbing soot off the side of the shrine's stone basin, you find something lodged in the crevice, a tiny, carved amulet, worn nearly smooth. You pull it free. It's a scarab, a real one. Polished hematite, barely larger than your thumbnail. With faint symbols still etched on its belly, you glance around. No one sees. You could hand it over to the priest. You could turn it in to the scribe. You could place it reverently back in the niche and whisper a prayer like you were taught. Instead, you hide it in your pouch, not because you're greedy, because for once, you want something sacred for yourself. Just one thing not destined for a tomb or altar or smug noble's curiosity shelf. That night, in the village, you sit by the fire, thumbing the scarab between your fingers. Hapu sees it, raises an eyebrow. I found it. You say quietly. He shrugs. Then maybe it found you. You both laugh. Not at the idea. Just at how tired you are. A laugh that's more about survival than joy. Nearby, Nebbit is teaching the children a protection song. One of those sing-song spells people hum while mixing flour or washing clothes. It goes something like 3 drops of honey, 4 grains of sand. Whisper Ma'at's name and hold her hand. The kids repeat it in clumsy harmony, swaying as they work. You hum along, just under your breath. You remember your mother used to sing that one when you were little, back when you believed songs could cure fevers and keep scorpions out of your shoes. After dinner, lentils again. With one suspicious-looking date, you lie down on your mat and pull the scarab out again. You stare at it, wondering who carved it, when, why they hid it, or if they dropped it and never knew it was gone. You press it to your chest, just for a moment, then you slip it back into the pouch with the girl's clay bead and the reed feather. In your world, magic isn't lightning or flying or glowing scrolls. It's scraps, fragments, things that don't belong to anyone else. Things small enough to hide, but big enough to make you believe, for a few minutes, that maybe, just maybe, you're not entirely forgotten. It starts with a sound, a sharp gasp, then silence. Not a scream, not yet. Just the sort of noise someone makes when their body gives out before their voice does. You're hauling buckets of stone chips when it happens. Just past midday. The sun is directly overhead, and the quarry floor is shimmering like a pan full of oil. The work has been relentless today, no breaks. Barely a sip of warm beer. You're moving on habit more than thought. Sweat tracing lines down your ribs, and your arms feel like they belong to someone else. Then that sound. You drop the bucket and look toward the southern ramp. A man is lying there, slumped awkwardly across a basket of chisels, eyes wide and unfocused. His name is Many. You've spoken to him once or twice. He had a joke about Pharaoh's statues always having perfect knees. As if the gods are allergic to crouching. He's not joking now. The overseer is already pushing through the crowd, eyes scanning for movement. Fableem, get him up, he says, sharp and curt. But Mene doesn't move, doesn't blink. Someone nudges him with the toe of their sandal. Nothing. A scribe approaches, looks him over, once, and whispers something to the foreman. The overseer scowls. Remove him. Just like that, you and 2 others are tasked with the removal. That's the word they use, remove. As if he's a rock out of place. A tool past use. You lift him gently. Though there's no ceremony, his body is still warm, still heavy. You avoid looking at his face. You carry him to the workers' rest field, an empty patch of scrub near the acacia grove. There's no priest waiting. No music. Just a hole in the ground already half dug. As if the earth expected him. The man who started the pit is silent. He keeps digging even as you lay Many down beside him. Hapoyoins you. Eyes downcast. He says nothing. Just picks up a shovel. So do you? There's no burial shroud. No scarabs. No rites. Just soil. Shoveled. Scooped. Pressed down, like it's trying to forget. You stand in the silence afterward, staring at the mound. Flies buzz lazily in the heat. A dog watches from a distance. No one cries. No one chants. You mutter a few words. Something about Maat and balance and the Nile. You're not sure if you're asking the gods to welcome him or scold them for letting this happen. Hapu adds softly, "He was funny. He made that joke about Pharaoh's sandals once." Then you go back to work, because there's still stone to move, still ramps to climb, still scribes with scrolls and overseers with quotas, and the sun, still hanging in the sky, like an overseer. You can't escape. Historians still argue whether Egyptian laborers, especially those at state sites, received proper burials or were left where they fell. Some records mention modest rituals performed by fellow workers, quick words, a shared crust of bread, a charm dropped into the earth. Others suggest that unless you had rank or a family to bribe a priest, you simply vanished. You work the rest of the day with a numbness in your chest. Not grief. Exactly. Not shock. Just that heavy thing that settles inside you when someone disappears from your world and the work doesn't pause to notice. That evening, you sit by the fire, picking absently at a piece of bread that's gone hard at the edges. The others are quieter than usual. A few speak in low voices about Many, how he once carved a perfect lotus flower into the side of a tool chest, how he used to hum off-key while hauling bricks. Someone says he had a son in the next village over. Someone else says he had no one. You wonder which is worse. Your mother lights a small oil lamp and sets it by the doorway. For the dead, she says, even the ones with no names. You lie on your mat, staring at the flicker. The flame wavers every time the breeze shifts. You think about your own name, whether anyone would remember it if you collapsed tomorrow, whether anyone would light a lamp, or mutter a prayer, or tell a half-true story about your jokes. Later, as sleep edges in, your sister asks you, do workers go to the field of reeds? The field of reeds, the eternal paradise, green land, clear water, endless food, no overseers. You pose, then say, only if they keep good records. She frowns. That's not fair. You nod. No, it isn't. She rolls over, pulling the thin linen tighter around her shoulders. I'm going anyway. She mumbles. You smile in the dark. Me too. The lamp flickers once more, then fades. You wake to thunder. Not real thunder, there's no rain. Not here. Not in this dusty corner of the Nile's hip where the sky forgets how to cry. No. This thunder is human voices. Feet. Distant clanging. A noise like the air itself has caught fire. You sit up, heart pounding, and catch the tail end of a whisper. Someone outside your hut says, they marched at dawn. Another replies, from Thebes. It started. You step into the morning sun, which already bakes your cheeks, and find a knot of workers gathered near the edge of the village. They're whispering fast, clustered tight. The news is spreading like wildfire, carried on barley dust in Thebes. They say, the workers walked out, laid down their tools, refused to build. You blink. That's not a joke. No one answers. Even Hapu is quiet, his brow furrowed, as if trying to summon a vision. Rumors. That's what they are. But they're powerful. More powerful than whips or quotas. In Thebes, the stonecutters had enough. They say, demanded better rations. Loudly, publicly, with chants. One version says they stormed the granary. Another claims They walked to the temple gates and laid flat on their backs in the courtyard until someone finally listened. You're not sure which story to believe. But you know the overseers believe something, because there's already tension in the air. More guards than usual. More counting. More eyes watching the hands that hammer. Lift. To die. Scrub. You've always known. Rebellion was possible in theory. But theories don't get you fed. They don't keep your mat dry or your mother safe. You live in a world built on obedience, stone after stone. Whip after whip. That's the deal. You carry the load. Or you get buried under it. Still, the thought lingers. As you walk toward the tool tent, Hapu leans in and whispers, "If they did it, why can't we?" You glare at him. "You want to end up like many," he shrugs. "Many died quiet. I'd rather make noise." You spend the day with your ears open and your mouth shut. The work is the same movestone. Fix plaster. Clean the ramp, but the conversations have changed. Everyone's listening, even while pretending not to. And the overseers can feel it. One of them shouts more than usual. He trips over his own staff. And no one laughs. Not even a chuckle. At midday, a scribe posts a notice near the granary. It's written in that neat, superior script. They all use the kind that curves smugly, even when announcing death. It says, "Any act of collective disobedience will be met with swift punishment by decree of the vizier." Under it, someone draws a tiny donkey with a very large head. You don't know who did it, but you salute them silently. Historians still debate whether the Theban strikes were acts of labor organization or simple desperation. Some believe they were calculated, almost modern in form, complete with petitioning, negotiation, and standstill. Others say it was more chaotic, fueled by hunger. Not principle, but they all agree on one thing: it happened. The world trembled slightly, and for a moment, even pharaohs noticed the ants. That night, your village is oddly hushed. Fires burn lower. No songs, just murmured plans. Glances exchanged over bowls of lentils. Eyes flitting toward the road. Hapu sits beside you, sharpening a chisel that he's not scheduled to use tomorrow. You ask, "You think it'll reach us?" He nods once. The Nile flows both ways. Your mother joins you later, settling beside the fire with a weary sigh. She watches the flames, then says, "When I was little, they said Pharaoh could hear lies on the wind." You raise an eyebrow, and now she shrugs. Now he can't even hear his workers starve. Later, after everyone drifts off to sleep, you lie on your back, staring at the thatch above you. You imagine Thebes' men standing together in the dust, refusing to move. You imagine their faces, their fear, their fury, the risk it must have taken just to say no. And then you imagine your own feet, rooted in place, too used to forward to stop now. In the quiet, you reach into your pouch and feel for the scarab. It's smooth, cold. It doesn't speak, doesn't glow, doesn't hum. But you imagine it watching, waiting. You whisper, "If they do it here, help me stand." Then you close your eyes and sleep with fists clenched not in anger. In preparation, the next morning begins oddly soft, a false kind of calm. The sky is clear, the breeze gentle, and the guards are smiling. Not all of them, just a few. The overseer even greets the work crew with a nod. which would usually mean someone's about to be publicly scolded. But no, not today. You glance at Hapu. He's already watching you. Lips tight. Something's off. He mutters. You know what he means. It's the kind of silence that settles right before a cobra strikes, when even the birds forget to chirp. As you begin hauling water from the canal for mixing mortar, a strange sight meets you at the south gate, a line of temple officials arriving with baskets. Actual baskets, full of dates, bread, jars of fresh beer, honey. The workers around you freeze. One of the priests announces in a theatrical tone, "A gift of gratitude from His Majesty for your unwavering loyalty and effort." He gestures like he's addressing a painting, in honor of the workers of the divine monument. You stare. That doesn't happen. Gifts don't just arrive. Bread doesn't come warm unless someone's trying to distract you from something else. That something else arrives an hour later. The foreman's wife is being carried into the workers' village on a litter. She's pregnant again. Visibly so. Lounging beneath a gauze canopy, while slaves fan her lazily with palm fronds. Her eyes are ringed in kohl. Her lips painted too brightly for this hour. And her gold necklace glints like it's trying to blind someone. You know her. Of course. Everyone does. Nessani. Half rumor, half commandment. Fully untouchable. She never enters the workers' camp unless she's inspecting something or showing off. Today, she's doing both. As the litter stops, the fan bearers part, and Nesseni descends in sandals so delicate they look like folded flower petals. She places one hand on her swollen stomach and surveys the crowd like she's deciding whether to scold or bless. Then she says, "You're all to be congratulated. The vizier himself has taken notice. Additional rations are being issued this week." Gasps. Murmurs. Suspicion. The last time the vizier took notice, 6 men were whipped for losing a chisel. Then she smiles tight and smug and adds, "But let there be no misunderstandings. Anu disturbance, whisper, or gathering will be regarded as conspiracy. The gods see more than you think." She strokes her belly. The message is clear. Your reward is a threat, wrapped in honey. She turns to leave, but not before tossing a single copper ring into the dirt. No one moves to grab it, not even the desperate ones. You all just watch it land, glinting for a moment before settling into the dust. Later, while stacking limestone chips into a new drainage trench, Hapu says what you're thinking. She came to show us her baby. You grunt, to remind us what hers will inherit. Historians still argue about the power dynamics of elite women in ancient Egypt, whether they held real influence, or simply wielded borrowed authority from husbands and fathers. But to you, there's no doubt Nessini owns her world, and she visits yours like a queen inspecting an ant farm. You wonder how much grain it takes to buy that kind of smug. That night, back in the village, the mood is volatile. The food gifts are distributed small portions, but better than usual. Still, no one's celebrating. People mutter. A few make jokes. Praise Pharaoh. Someone says, raising a crust of honey bread like a toast, "Long may he ignore us." You find your mother sewing by firelight. She's quiet, but her stitches are faster than usual. Tense. Controlled. "I saw her," she says, without looking up. The foreman's wife. You nod. She used to visit our village when I was young. Her maid told me she cried for hours once, after a locust flew into her soup. You wait. She has power. she says softly, but she doesn't understand it. She wears it like perfume, pretty, and meant for others to notice, not for herself. You sit beside her, say nothing. Much later, as you lie in the dark, your mind won't settle, not because of Neseni or the bread, but because of what's coming. The whispers haven't stopped. They're thicker now, like river mud, stickier, harder to shake. Some say there's going to be a sit-down tomorrow, that no one will lift a chisel, that you'll all simply remain still, not to feel, just paused, a test, to see if they notice, to see if you can. You don't know if you'll join, but your hands are trembling slightly, not from fear, at least not entirely. Something else is growing inside you. A sharp edge. A sense of scale. You remember Neseni's baby. That pale, pampered belly. You imagine the child growing up, never knowing what quarry dust tastes like. Never touching a blister. Never being told his sweat is a blessing to the gods. You imagine your own child. One you don't even have yet kneeling in this same dirt. And for the first time, you feel something dangerous. Not anger, expectation. The morning begins in absolute stillness. You rise before the sun, just like always, expecting the usual chorus sandals, scuffing, distant coughing, the wet splash of water jugs being filled. But today, nothing. No clatter, no shouting, just the wind, brushing through reed fences like it's holding its breath with the rest of you. You dress in silence. Your hands move automatically, wrapping the linen tight across your chest, tying the frayed cord around your waist. You listen as you walk past your mother, who sits awake with her loom untouched, past Hapu, who meets your gaze and gives a nod so small it could be a twitch. No words. At the worksite, the overseers wait, flanked by the usual row of scribes. Their faces are sour. One of them shouts the roll call, voice cracking slightly as it echoes off the half-built stone retaining wall. You all line up, but no one moves. You just stand there, each man rooted to the spot, tools still on the ground, baskets untouched, hammers sleeping like crocodiles in the shade. Someone adjusts their headcloth. Another scratches an elbow, but no one lifts a thing. The overseer's voice wavers. Begin. No one does. The silence is thick, humid, a buzzing tension, like the moment before a swarm erupts. Your heart hammers in your chest, but you hold your ground. You glance at Hapu, his jaw is set. He's holding the handle of his chisel, but not lifting it. The overseer steps forward. This is not a request. You are required by royal decree to resume work. Still. No one moves. A flicker of fear runs through your belly, not because of the shouting, but because of what happens next. Absolutely nothing. The guards don't rush forward. The scribes don't start scribbling names onto punishment lists. The entire machine stutters. They didn't prepare for silence. Historians still argue about the first organized labor strike in history, often citing the Deir el-Medina workers' protest during the 20th dynasty. What records remain tell of men sitting down and refusing to work after being denied rations for weeks. But here, in your sun-bleached corner of the empire, it's something raw and immediate, not a plan. Not even rebellion. Just stillness. Eventually, the overseer storms off to fetch someone with more authority. You wait. The sun rises higher. The dust begins to swirl. Someone sneezes. A baby cries from the village beyond the gates. Finally, The priest arrives, not the high one. Of course, just one of the temple stewards, the kind who never seems to sweat. He steps onto a raised platform and delivers a speech laced with honey and vinegar. Appraises your dedication, reminds you of your duty, and gently suggests that only enemies of the state would dare disrupt divine work. Someone near the back coughs, audibly. Then, unbelievably, the priest announces, today's work is suspended. A day of sacred reflection. His Majesty commands you to rest in reverence. You blink. You've never been given rest like this. Not without illness. Not without grief. The overseers look humiliated. The guards confused. But the workers, you exchange glances, not smiles, nothing so risky. Just quiet looks. Recognition. A shared breath of something fragile and electric. You return to the village slowly, walking in a loose group that doesn't feel quite like a procession or a mob. Just a group of people who, for the first time, were allowed to pause. Back home, your mother is waiting. She says nothing, just offers you a bowl of stewed lentils and a scrap of sweetened bread that came from somewhere secret. You eat in silence, more aware than ever of each bite, each swallow. Later, by the water's edge, you and Hapu sit with your feet in the Nile. He tosses a pebble. You toss another. Do you think this will change anything? He asks. You shrug. Maybe. Maybe not. But today, we stop them. He nods. Even if they pretend we didn't. And that's the thing they will pretend. Tomorrow, the overseers will act like it never happened. The priests will spin it as a divine rest day. The scribes might even rewrite the scrolls to say, Pharaoh, in his mercy, granted you time off because of a dream or a star alignment. But you will know, so will every man who stood still. That night, the village hums in a different key. There are no songs, but there are stories spoken low, passed between fires, little half-laughs. Someone sketches a hieroglyph in the dirt of a man lying down next to a brick pile, with the caption, Wise like Ptah. You lie on your mat beneath a sky that looks a little wider than usual. The stars feel closer. The air cooler. In the darkness, your sister whispers, Are we going to be punished? You answer, Probably. She's quiet a while. Then, would we do it again? You think about it. About the stillness. The power of not lifting your hand when told to. The weight of silence in a place built entirely on sound and motion. Yes. You say softly. We would. Then you listen to the breeze. And fall asleep, knowing that even the smallest shift can ripple through stone. The silence doesn't last. You knew it wouldn't. The following morning arrives not with peace, but with precision. A tightened grip, disguised as routine. The guards are earlier. The scrolls longer. The overseers stiffer. They don't shout. They don't scold. They watch. You've never seen so many eyes scanning so few baskets of tools. The stillness of yesterday has shattered, but not in the way they expected. You're all back at work. Yes. The chisels rise. The ropes strain. The stones move. But the ground beneath you feels different. Like something's shifted just beneath the sand. The rhythm is off. The gears of this grand machine now grind over a new awareness that you are not altogether powerless. You return to your task, a series of limestone blocks that need smoothing for the next platform tier. Your arms ache. Your shoulders burn. But inside, Where fear once sat like a squatter in your ribcage, there's now a steadier weight. Not bravery. Exactly. But the memory of having stood still. Hapu doesn't say much today. Neither does anyone. Words are risky now. But there's a glance past when a scribe stumbles on loose gravel. A quiet hum shared between workers hauling ropes together. A pause at the water jar, where someone mutters, "May Maat favor us with more rest days." That gets a few chuckles. The overseer pretends not to hear. By mid-morning, the tool tent is short, one hammer. You know where it is. It's wedged behind a brick in the north corner where the wall sags. You saw someone hide it there yesterday. No one claims it now. The scribe records a replacement with a frown, then walks away. It's a small act, a quête de fiance. But it spreads. That night, the stars are unusually bright. You sit with your mother and sister outside your hut. Shelling. Dried beans. The air is sweet, with lotus from the riverbank. And a beetle clicks its wings nearby, like a tiny Uchmental god. "Did Pharaoh hear you yesterday?" your sister asks. Cracking a bean pod, you smile. Probably not. Your mother chuckles. But maybe his cook did. I hear he skipped dessert trying to draft a new decree. That night, someone paints a figure onto the back wall of the latrine hut, a stick man with a round belly and a whip dangling uselessly from his hand. Next to it, another figure lounges with a loaf of bread on his chest. Smiling. It's crude. It's childish. It's hilarious. In the morning, no one mentions it. But no one removes it either. Still, it's clear the generosity has ended. Rations are back to their original size. No more honey. No fresh fish. The dates have vanished, replaced by the usual lentils and bread, so dry it could sand a coffin. But even with hunger tightening again, something inside the village feels firmer. A few nights later, a new worker joins your hut, a boy from a neighboring settlement. He's barely 16. All elbows and sunburn. Quiet. Nervous. His first day is rough. He drops a chisel, trips over a cart, and nearly passes out from heat by midday. That evening, as he struggles to light a cook fire, you pass him your own flint stone without a word. He looks up, surprised. "Why are you helping me?" You say, "Because someone helped me." He nods, then grins. "I'll pass it on." And just like that, the thing spreads again, not as whispers this time, but as kindness. A shared jug of water, a lifted basket, a smile passed from mouth to mouth like a secret too good to keep. Historians often overlook these small rebellions, the quiet kindnesses in the margins, the stolen nap, the hidden chisel, the loaf halved for someone else's child. But maybe those are the real uprisings. Not protests shouted at temples, but mercy given in places where cruelty is expected. One night, while you're repairing a chipped paint section near the shrine wall, you glance up and see the scarab again, the same one you hid in your pouch long ago. You finger it gently, press it into the wall, and tuck it behind a loose tile. A gift for someone who might need it next. The river keeps flowing. The stones keep stacking. The sun still rises, relentless and golden. But now, the people beneath it remember the day they paused, the day they stood still and realized their breath had weight. You may never see a noble admit it. You may never hear a priest confess that the gods blinked. But you'll carry it in your hands, in your footsteps, In the stories you tell your children as they sleep in the shade of walls you once built, and one day, just maybe, they'll stand still too. Word count 1. 499. Wind down 300 words. So now, as the Nile drifts silently under the stars and the torches burn low, you can finally rest. The chisels are quiet. The overseers are shadows behind their curtains. Your mat is firm beneath you. The woven fabric, worn but warm. You've done enough. You've stood. You've worked. You've remembered. The moonlight slips across your face like cool water. In the distance, someone's humming an old lullaby half-tune, half-prayer. You let it wrap around your thoughts like linen. You picture the field of reeds, not as a grand palace with golden gates, but as a place where no one shouts and bread is always warm, where your arms don't ache, where you aren't forgotten. Let that world be close. Even if just for now, you breathe in slowly. You hear the soft whistle of wind through palm fronds, the gentle trickle of canal water somewhere beyond the huts. The clay bead in your pouch is still there. The scarab, passed on. The memory of stillness folded neatly between your ribs. You did not vanish. And neither will the story. So rest now, weary builder. Let your mind drift down river with the moon. Let the dust settle. Let the silence hold you, not as a burden, but as a blessing, because tonight, you don't have to carry anything. You are free, even if only in dreams. Sweet dreams.